spirituality has its own baggage when we label it something as spiritual. I'm not talking about necessarily like like seeing Jesus in your Cheerios or something like that, but like I mean I think we all at some level experience something in some of us would share it and some of us wouldn't. That just was at that moment we still cannot explain it, and or maybe it has happened repeatedly. So for me, I reserve. I mean, I'm always giving science priority. I think it should be given priority and more credibility because so much more goes into the actual repetition of the testing. But I feel like there should be an allowable component.
It's a very good question. I think many people share the same question. But there are also many people who try to understand what's really going on. The easy hypothesis would be, okay, I see something supernatural, I see a spirit, I see a ghost, I see an angel. But there are also other explanations that are more consistent with sciences and actually more consistent with everybody's experiences, considered together. Even back in the 17th, 18th century, David Hume, you already heard him, I think, from Greg's class, from reading Dennett. David Hume wrote an essay on inquiry into human understanding, and in one part of it, he wrote a section on miracles. And people said a lot of miracles, right? That indicates that the world is not completely causally determined, so there must be some supernatural intervention. But David Hume examined all those evidence, stories, reports, and he found that there are no conclusive evidence, and really there are no explanation which are indeed nothing which cannot be explained by causal scientific theories. So even back 200 years, 300 years before, you see a lot of debates, and Hume already, in a sense, have some pretty good arguments. Because the debate continues today, but most people today would say, yeah, we do have. And in most cases, we do have natural explanation. Because you have to apply the explanation to each particular case and to analyze it. But in most situations, I would say, in almost all the situations, you could find out from a natural explanation if you just pay attention to it.
Yeah, this is where Dennett, when he talks about Hume, says that the point is we don't know everything about the physical, all the laws of physics. And it used to be thought that atoms were the unsplittable basic elements, and they behave in this way. And then, obviously, in the last 50, 60 years, as we've had the technology to really, and some of the money to build things to examine subatomic particles, we see they do behave differently. And there have been evidence of that, like the missing, like Einstein always said he knew his theory of relativity wasn't perfect. There's some missing elements that can't be explained by, at that point, known science in the early 20th century. So Dennett explains that, the concept that Brock is asking about by saying, although, as David Hume says, things appear to be miracles because we think things predictably always act this way. Every time we drop this, gravity will make the pen fall. But there is potentially something that we don't know, and it's not that it's not measurable, maybe not measurable by our current technology. And kind of like what Ray was talking about, how a lot of physicists do believe in mysteries. They see a lot of mystery. We don't have the technology to examine all those things. We don't have the technology to get to the far reaches of the universe where it's expanded. So theoretically, there are just things we don't know about the physical properties of matter.
I think that's really a good point.
And Epicurus talked about that was like this, there was that, even they recognize that because there's the potential swerve of the atomic particles that might create something. So we can't truly, even as a determinist, you can't truly predict what that future is going to be.
Yeah, that's the second issue. You have two very good questions. The first one, really, that's a really good point. The science we have today is not the final word. It's developing, it's advancing. It may find out what we believe today was not completely true. So in that sense, we regard as, unexplainable, mysterious, maybe turn out to be just a new scientific discovery. So in that sense, you don't need supernatural intervention, but really just need new sciences. So that's a very good point. The second one was determinism. We'll talk about it later, whether what it means to say determined and what it means how Hume's problem induction affects the field.
I was just going to say is that, also Dennett, and I'm maybe jumping a little bit ahead in the chapters, but Dennett also talks about quantum physics and how a lot of laws in quantum physics, there's no predictability, and it's like, how we know that it's a science, and we know that it's real, and, we usually base science on predictability, but yet here we have something, a subsection of science where predictability is not central to the main idea, so that was a very fascinating idea.
Yeah, it's not just a subsection, it's really the fundamental part of the science,
Right.
which tells us the world is not deterministic, really based upon probability. So that was a shock to many people. And also that gives us hope. Gives some people hope that, okay, free will maybe somehow arise from those deterministic fundamental principles. We'll see how that helps or not. And you'll see that, William James would say that doesn't happen. The base assumption, the first one, materialism, naturalism is actually a general version of materialism. Here, it's not really talk about mind body literal, but really talk about everything in this world, whatever happens in this world, follows really scientific principles. And really philosophy as subject, as method, you would say, this philosophy is not a priori discipline. It has to respect sciences. It cannot contradict sciences, let's say. In the past, even in Kant's time, not to mention Descartes' time, that philosophy was given a very high status. It's something that can establish the foundation for all the scientific inquiries. It's really the mother of the truth, the mother of all sciences. But today, many at least, many philosophers are naturalists in the sense that philosophy cannot contradict sciences. Rather, the inquiry has to be based upon the most contemporary scientific theories. And in that sense,
you're a conformist.
Sorry?
In that sense, you conform, right? You conform to everybody else. You don't really think outside the box because it's just not respectful, or I don't get it.
No. There's not respect. Is not really in the sense of say paying respect to the person. Respect means science rules.
Right, but it's just you agree not to disagree about certain things, right?
Yes, it's something that it's an assumption for you to do your research. If you do the philosophical research, you say, hey, quantum mechanics is force, and you're a philosopher, not a quantum mechanics physicist, and then the people will just take you as crazy. You have no credibility. Really, as a philosopher, you're not trained in quantum mechanics and you're not trained in physics. How can you say that quantum mechanics is force, and you do your research based upon the force of quantum mechanics? That's really something, we philosophers, most of us have to accept. And not everybody. Still, there are some people, even some pretty famous guys who disregard science. But most philosophers would say